I believe it started when I was around 6 years old. My parents often had friends over in the house. I didn't know they were polyamorous OFC. One day I was outside playing, got hurt, and when I ran inside caught my parents making out with some random guy. They told me they have other adults that they love and it's a completely normal thing. Me being a child just accepted that. They gave up being secretive and their partners would constantly be around, even joining on outings. I remember that on my 10th birthday they invited 3 of their partners, one of who I'd never seen before. And for the rest of the day my parents just withdrew from my party and hung out with them. I never saw them doing anything explicit again, but they would kiss their partners, hug them, make flirty comments. Something that would be normal between parents but with many more people. Sometimes I came home from school and my parents were gone and there was some random adult in our house. Some of them seemed surprised that my parents even had a child. I always hated it, but since my parents had told me this was normal, I assumed many adults probably did similar things and that it's just an adult thing all kids hate. Later they had less partners and eventually seemed to stop. Not that I'd know for sure. I moved out with 17. I didn't think about it anymore. A year ago I started therapy, other reasons. As usual the topic of my upbringing came up and it brought back many feelings I wasn't aware of. I realized that although my parents were always good to me, I had never really felt close to any of them and still have a lot of resentment, that they made me feel like I had to compete for my parents' attention with random strangers. A while ago, I visited them and they told me they are going to take part in a documentary about polyamorous families, and that the producers would like to include interviews with the children. So they would love if I could agree and tell everyone that polyamory doesn't mess kids up. All my resentment bubbled up and I said that I cannot agree because I would not be able to say anything positive. My parents looked shocked. I had never brought this up before, and asked why, and I unloaded all that I always felt pushed aside. We barely had any family time without strangers intruding. It turned into an argument and I became loud and yelled that the truth is it did me up and they shouldn't have had a child. My mother cried and my father said I should probably leave. So I left and was shaken up for the rest of the week, but also felt regret because I've never made my mom cry before. Later my father sent me a message that was like, "We are sorry you feel that way. Can we have a calm discussion about this soon?" Even though I tried to, it's like I can't reply. This argument brought something very emotional up in me. My cousin, Jake, got outed about 4 or 5 days before his 18th birthday in the summer. His parents, my aunt and uncle, made arrangements for him to be sent to one of those awful camps that claim they could cure him. A kid in his community was forced to go and came back and was clearly not well, so Jake didn't want to go. Jake ran away from home and jumped from one family house to another. His folks didn't file a missing person report because they didn't want to look bad to their neighbors. They just told them that he went to that camp willingly. He disappeared in the middle of October and turned up in my city a week later. After making sure he was safe to bring home, my wife and I allowed him to stay. He didn't want me to tell the rest of the family for a while, because those people at the camp keep showing up to take him. I made sure to talk to a lawyer, who assured Jake that they cannot take him. 3 days ago, he told his parents he was here. A few hours later, those damn camp people showed up, but they were unable to take him. My family has been blowing up my phone for the last 2 days, angry that I didn't tell someone sooner. Well, Jake didn't feel safe yet, and still doesn't. I wanted to make sure he was ready. Still, even those that want to protect Jake is upset with me for hiding him. I figured I wasn't the for hiding him from my more narrow-minded family. It was those that really wanted to help Jake that made me feel guilty. They were all scared out of their minds and wanted the peace to know he was okay. I felt bad for not telling them. Though I am sure they wouldn't had turned him in, I felt bad because we were working on keeping him safe. Also, we got a lawyer who got the police on the lookout for those camp people in case they try anything. Jake is not going out alone until we are sure he is safe. We are looking on how to get his paperwork, like his birth certificate, here because no way he trusts his parents to just hand them over. My granny-in-law is talking to some people that could help. I am 15 years old, just celebrated my birthday. My family doesn't have a lot of money, so I didn't expect much. Mom cooked my favorite dinner, and we all had ice cream for dessert. I also got a birthday card with $25. It was a nice day. My boyfriend, 15 years, was invited to the birthday dinner but couldn't make it because he had to work. He felt really bad but promised to make up for it the next day. Even though he works, all of his paycheck goes to his parents to help support his big, 5 siblings, family. He has always been great about finding fun, interesting, creative things for us to do that are free, cheap. It inspired me to up my game and help find fun, cheap activities for us, but I'll admit that he's still so much better at it. So, while I absolutely was not expecting a gift, I was definitely looking forward to whatever he imagined up for our day. There's a bakery I love, but it's over an hour away from where we live. The desserts are delicious, but expensive. I often talk about this one cupcake I love from that bakery, but I can only enjoy it when I'm in the city and can afford it. He doesn't have a car, so he had to take a train, then walk, then take a train back to get me my favorite cupcake for my birthday. He also planned a historic walk of our town, with a bunch of obscure history he'd researched that I didn't know about. It was awesome. I asked to go home to put the cupcake in the fridge while we walked so it would be nice and fresh for me later. We went on a nice long historic walk and it was a great day. Not gonna lie. When I got home my mouth was already salivating thinking about that cupcake. When I opened the fridge, it was gone. I found the empty container in the trash. I went to the living room and asked my parents who ate my cupcake, and Dad dismissively said he did. He thought it was an extra. I threw a shit fit. I said it was my birthday cupcake and he was an asshole for eating it. He said if my BF really cared about me he would have bought me more than one, and that they gave me $25. So go buy more if it's really that important. He doesn't think he did anything wrong and is calling me an entitled brat for being upset. I think my BF went above and beyond to get me that cupcake, much more than my own father did for me, and he should feel ashamed and apologetic for what he did. My sister-in-law and I have an agreement. She watches my kids 3 days a week, and I watch hers 3 days a week. This agreement has stood since March 2020 without issues. Any changes have been discussed weeks in advance. A couple weeks ago, we had an argument. The next day, I brought my kids to her house, dropped them off, and left. I didn't speak to my sister-in-law, because when one of us is in a rush, like I was, it's standard for us to just let the kids out, stay in the car, and drive off when you see the door open. I drove to work, about 40 minutes away. When I got there, I had about 20 missed calls, and even more texts, all from my sister-in-law, all saying she didn't want to watch the kids given our argument. Her first text arrived a little before I got to her place, but I didn't see it until I got to work because my phone is always on silent when I drive. I rang her, said I'll arrange to work from home, then come get the kids. She said I have 45 minutes to get back to her place or she would call the police. I told my supervisor the situation, and she said I could leave after I did a few things. This delayed me 20 minutes. When I got back to my sister-in-law's, just over an hour later, she said she'd already called the police when the 45 minutes ran out. I then had to stick around long enough to tell the officer that I didn't abandon my children, there was just a communication issue. Sister-in-law and I had another shouting match later over this. I arranged other childcare for my kids and I've been mostly ignoring her since. However, she reached out and apologized, and has asked if I'd be willing to go back to the old childcare arrangement. I work with kids. If I got child abandonment on my record, I would never work in my field again, which she knew. And her calling the police was a massive overreaction, so if she needs a babysitter she can go whistle for all I care. She said that if I checked my phone, talked to her that morning, or came back when I was supposed to, she would not have needed to call the police, and I did this to myself. As she gave me a warning with that first text and I could have checked my phone or spoken to her directly when I got to her place. All of which she says she would have done if she were in my position, given that we'd argued the night before. I've told her that if she thinks I'm babysitting for her, she's delusional, and she's on her own. Because of my refusal, It's looking like she may have to quit her job because my brother and her would pay more for a babysitter than they would earn from her working. My mother and brother have both called me an arsehole because there were no consequences to her calling the police, and that while she overreacted, she's apologized, so if I really forgive her, I'll let us move on. This income loss would also mean that she, my brother, and my niece and nephew might need to move somewhere cheaper. That my brother might have to take on extra hours at work. And in an extreme scenario, they may even be completely unable to live independently, meaning they'd have to move in with her parents, who live several hours away.